What's going on YouTube? It's Matty B. Welcome back to the channel, and as always, thank you all for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Today, we're back for another midweek feature for a preview for Redbud Pro National this weekend, and then we'll touch on some various topics on what's been going on in Pro Motocross this week, such as Tom Vial, and now new rumors surfacing that he may be headed back to MXGP. And the rumors have been flying at full speed this week because then, in an opposite move, Kai de Wolf is now rumored to be headed to the USA next year. I feel kind of bad. The poor guy has gotten a feature pretty much every week, but we kind of got to touch on Jorge Prado, and now the new rumors and speculation on what his future may entail. And then we'll get into previewing Redbud for round 6 of Pro Motocross this weekend. We've got some exciting visitors and some new names on the entry list. And then, of course, we'll do a track preview. I've got some GoPro from racing there last year, and I'll even give you some POV of launching the leap, no choice. But before we get into all of that, I first need to thank my channel sponsors. Huge thank you to ASV Inventions and Sirius Studio for supporting the channel. But second, and more importantly, I just wanted to give a brief tribute and a rest in peace to Aiden Zing, who unfortunately lost his life in an accident at Mammoth Motocross last weekend. And this is the part of the sport that we all hate. Aiden was only 16 years old and a rising star in the sport of motocross, won a championship at Loretta Lynn's in Super Mini last year, then found himself with a Team Green ride for 2025, but more importantly than all of that, by all accounts, Aiden was an absolutely amazing kid, very respectful, well-spoken, and just the total package. I never got the privilege to meet him myself, but now I will always wish I had. One thing I have to say is I hate seeing all the speculation online and all the people trying to place blame. Accidents happen, and I believe that's all this was, but regardless of all that, rest in peace, Aiden Zing, you will never be forgotten. Now, back into the racing. To start off with this week's Silly Season Rumor Mill National, we're going to talk Tom Vial and how he is now rumored to be heading back to MXGP. Vital MX's Lewis Phillips reported it on Twitter yesterday that there were conversations for Tom to head back to MXGP, but not for KTM, but rather for HRC Honda. And this would actually be a super interesting and very wild move in my opinion, because typically when Europeans come over here and have success, they usually don't go back. And the other thing that surprises me is how much I've heard about how much KTM and the KTM group love Tom Vial and how they don't want to let him go. So heading back to MXGP with the KTM group would maybe make a little bit more sense to me, but I am very surprised that he would do it with HRC Honda, and the deal is rumored to actually be done. And as wild as I might think it is, I actually think it would be a very solid move. After the 2 championships in the 250 East Series in Supercross, Tom is now forced up to the big leagues to jump right in the deep end with the 450s, and I really do not foresee that going very well. With all due respect to Tom, his Supercross skills are just not quite there with all of those elite 450 guys, and he didn't win those Supercross titles just because he was a great Supercross rider. I feel like it was mostly due to amazing racecraft and just being in it every weekend, so I think this could actually be a positive move for Tom. And now, on the flip side, we've got new rumors surfacing about Kai de Wolf and the potential for him to join the AMA Supercross and Motocross Series in 2026. And I believe this rumor may have also come from Vital MX's Lewis Phillips and Pulp MX's Steve Mathis. I did just watch another video on Vital MX where Michael Lindsay actually claimed that he did not think this was happening, but I just love the sound of it and the possibility of having another top-tier MXGP guy jumping into the American Series. And this kind of ties into Tom Vial's potential move back to Europe, because KTM had planned to run 3 450 riders with Vial having to move up and then only having 1 250 rider, but now that Vial may be out of the picture, that leaves room for them to scoop up another 250 rider, and who better than a former world champion and an unreal talent with great style and always exciting to watch, Kai de Wolf. And this year's MXGP campaign is not exactly going to plan for Kai de Wolf. Lots of crashes and inconsistency, but if he does make the transition across the pond and races here next year, I really could see his style transitioning nicely. He's got tons of bike skill. I could even see him being good at Supercross, maybe just got to clean up the mistakes. And now, continuing with our European theme for this week's episode, now we got to talk Jorge Prado again. And I've already worn out the panic button, it's out of the contract, but Southwick was better. He definitely looked a little bit more like Jorge Prado, and despite not finishing it off in the results column, he at least showed a little bit of flash that we all know he has. But Prado still doesn't seem super happy with the setup. Even in interviews after Southwick, he pretty much just claimed that he was a really good sand rider and that the bike wasn't really any better than it had been in previous weeks. In every interview I've heard with Jorge, there's always some sort of dig or complaint about the bike, and now I've even heard some interviews from the other side where Cowie is saying similar things about Jorge and how he just needs to worry about his effort and not the bike. So I don't know if you guys can smell that. It's not your tailpipe and it's not shake and bake, it's turmoil. And while listening to the Vital MX MXGP post-race show, I even heard that there are some rumors that Jorge has called around and done some shopping around, just checking in to see what teams in Europe are looking like just in case this Kawasaki USA excursion doesn't go to plan, which I think we can all agree, so far it has not. So is the writing on the wall for Prado? I really hope not. I hope they figure it out. I want to see him racing here and at the top of the field, but JS7 said it best. This year we have not been watching Jorge, we've been watching George. And I know he's still got years on his deal, but if you guys think a contract is going to make two unhappy parties continue the deal whenever they don't want to, then I've got some beachfront property to sell you in Indonesia. Next up, we will get a little bit into the 450 class for Redbud and some new names on the entry list, as well as a visiting legend. 9-time MXGP World Champion Antonio Cairoli is in the States and is going to race Redbud and Millville on the Ducati. And I just listened to an interview with Tony. It's not a Troily Designs Ducati project or anything like that. He actually claimed to be racing a mostly stock bike, and I think Tony and I may have a little bit different definitions of the word stock. But either way, this guy is such a legend. Even though he's already retired, he's still lining it up on the gate at the top level, and I am beyond hyped to see what Antonio and the Ducati have in the tank for these 2 rounds. He raced the MXGP of Great Britain at Matterley Basin a couple weeks ago and actually landed well inside the top 10, so a lot of excitement coming into the weekend with an MXGP legend and a new brand entering pro motocross. And then we got the return of Chase Sexton. It's always good to have one of the big dogs back in the mix, from banged up to lining up. And how weird of a situation was this? Never any official word on an injury besides banged up. I don't even think I've seen anything from KTM about him racing this weekend. I've just seen that reports are coming in that he'll be back and he's on the entry list. And I've heard a lot of speculation about where he's been. I even heard people speculate that he was waiting until the bike got better. One argument that I don't really agree with is the whole, oh, it works for Plessinger. Well, those guys are completely different riders. No bike setup is going to work perfect for 2 different guys. But what I will say is I don't think that bike is going to get any better while you're not racing it. I'll elaborate a little more when I get to my predictions, but I'm excited to see him back. The sport's better with the top guys in it. And then sticking with the 450 class because it didn't look like much was going on in the 250s, we got a few 2-digit guys and some really fast privateers making their pro motocross debut at round 6 this weekend. Henry Miller was on the list for High Point and didn't race, but he's back on it for Redbud, and I think he'll be there. Marshall Welton will be making his return after a knee surgery very late in the Supercross season, and he's also a Michigan local, so expect him to come out hot. Anthony Rodriguez will also be at his first pro motocross race of the season, and then PRMX's Cade Clayson, 2nd round of the year. I think he's on an abbreviated schedule, and if he does nothing else all weekend, I guarantee he wins the Dead Sailor National. Ryder Floyd, who's been jumping around a lot so far in pro motocross, started on a Honda 250F, then went to a Yamaha 250F, now we're on a Yamaha 450, and then the Moran's Mafia, Kevin Moran's also on the entry list for the first time this season. And this 450 class has become absolutely brutal to qualify in the top 36 if you're not one of those main guys. There's a lot more added into the fray this weekend, and we've already seen some really big names in some of those LCQs. And to top all that off, B-Practice goes first at Redbud this weekend with a fresh track. So buckle up because we just might see 450 qualifying turned upside down yet again. One thing I really love that's come about over the last few years is the amateur combines, and there's another one going down this weekend at Redbud. And these things are absolutely awesome. You've got experienced coaches, you're running a race day schedule on the pro national tracks. The only thing that I really don't like is that it's invite only, and I think a lot of that has to do with the manufacturers and who they want at the race, but I really hate that. I feel like that's kind of elitist thinking. I think they should open it up to anybody, run qualifying, and if you're fast enough to race, who cares who you know? Line it up. It's still an awesome addition to the sport, but that's just my opinion on it. Let me know what you guys think. I'm just always a fan of less barriers to entry, no choice. And now, finally, we will finish off today with a track preview and some predictions for round 6 of Pro Motocross at Redbud in Buchanan, Michigan this weekend. And this place is sick. It's America's motocross track. It gets Gnarls Barkley. Of course, you've got Laraco's Leap. Tons of fans. It's 4th of July, and you really just can't beat the atmosphere. And I was initially hoping and planning to be at Redbud, but then I was hit up by Josh Hill, who was interested in me coming to the Big Hill Jam, which is going to be a totally badass event out in Oregon at Albany Motorsports Park. Very excited to cover it, and I'm really glad that I made the decision to go to Big Hill Jam, because not only did I get denied media access for Pro Motocross, but apparently Zero Access is also now canceled as well. I don't really know much more, just going to leave it at that for now. But beyond stoked for Big Hill Jam, they actually want me there, and stay tuned for some awesome content. Now, to finish this off with some track preview and some predictions for round 6 of Pro Motocross at Redbud! They've switched between their 2 starting line locations over the last few years, but last year they went back to using their Motocross of Nations start, just a right-handed 180 U-turn, and I actually like this better. The dogleg left-right is super sketchy. And guys, full disclosure, this is amateur day last year, but long second straightaway into a tight 180 to the left. Usually stays pretty flat through there because they groom off the start, but then sweep through this little 90 to the right and then launch this step down the hill. I think poor Michael Lessie is still down there getting ran over. Super rough, inside single or outside around it. Inside, you can't really do that double. Outside, you can yank it. Super rough through this black mulch section, and then this section is usually a little bit different by the year. Last year, it was a wall jump into some rollers and then into the classic triple step up. And I cannot stress enough how rough this place gets. Another inside-outside option. Line choices are always at a premium at Redbud, and then this section is always known for getting beyond rough, super brutal, pick your way through the ruts, down a hill and into this steep off camber, which the camera does neither of those things justice, back up into a tight 180 left, super rutted through this section through the trees, and then back down, Gnarls Barkley, rough as can be, 90 right, inside-outside option into the spectator tabletop right in front of all the fans. And yeah, the inside-outside option is so in the contract for Redbud. Up this hill into what they call the Monza wall sweeper, always gets super whooped out, and then back down this little drop, and for whatever reason, this downhill gets some of the biggest bumps I've ever seen. A left at the bottom, ruts everywhere, pick one and pray, and then you got this super fun floater tabletop, and then I'm actually going to let you guys listen to the sound of what it sounds like to bark Laraco's Leap. Thing is massive, pucker factor is high, but then you land, nice berm around the outside or hold it tight inside, and then another big floater tabletop in front of all the fans, land and hit every single bump that's ever formed on any motocross track, inside-outside sand sweeper, and then these rollers. I cannot possibly overstate how brutal and how physically taxing they are. Final couple of corners, inside single options in both 90s, and then probably the hardest and slickest spot on the track, the finish line, right where all those scoop tires love to step out, land and charge into this corner and sweep back onto where the old start used to loop in, rip down the start straightaway back into the first corner, and that's a lap around the layout for 2024 at Redbud. Haven't heard anything about any changes, so I think this is what we're going to see this weekend. And then last but not least, predictions for this weekend. First of all, in the 250 class, I got no choice but to pick Deegan for the win. I'm sorry, you guys are calling me out for not going on a limb, but I didn't say I was going out on a limb. I said I was making predictions. Then for second, I gotta go with Sushi, Joe Shimoda. He's had the speed all season, and he's had a few bad races in a row, so I just feel like he's due to get back on the box. And then in third, I'm going to go with Levi Kitchen. I was between he and Tom Vial, but I just think Kitchen is a little better in the speed department, and you can send it at Redbud, so I think that'll suit the guys with a little bit looser style. And then in the 450 class, you guys know who I'm picking. Jet Lawrence is getting the overall. Whether it's a 1-1, I'm not sure, but by the weekend, it sure is looking more and more likely that it's going to get harder and harder to get a moto up on Jet. Then for second, I'm going to go with Eli Tomac. This is a good track for beast mode, and he'll be able to open up that YZ450 and let that thing eat. And then in third, the final podium spot, I'm actually going to go with Hunta. I was tempted to put in Chase Sexton, but who knows how we're feeling after being banged up. I can't imagine the bike has gotten any better or he's gotten any happier while not being at the races and testing it in race conditions, so I think we may see Sexton off the box, but that's just what I think. I'm just some dude with a channel and a phone. Let me know in the comments if you guys agree, disagree, think I'm cooked, or anything in between. You know I'm here for it, and I appreciate you guys tuning in. And now I'll end today's video with a close call, making a pass over Laraco's Leap without choice.